will cover what's new in UI section, what new privacy changes are, how changes in the runtime permissions could be possible, and stop at this is storage. So this agenda will be covered today with our presenter, Mr. Rajesh Suryavanshi, and he is an Android developer from India with 2.5 years of experience. Currently, he is working in Meter Global Real Estate Organization in Kuwait. So today he will present the above topic. If you have any question during the presentation, please type it into the question box in the Zoom meeting, and we'll cover these questions. Now, without any delay, I will turn the time over to Mr. Rajesh Suryavansham. Yes, Mr. Rajesh, please continue your presentation. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And am I audible loud?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
are audible.
yes. So I'm here to introduce all brand new changes and features that has been rolled out in its new version of Android, that is Android 11. And before I start, I would like to ask you all you a question that there are so many changes every year you'll see in Android ecosystems. You'll find that there is a new APIs or few deprecations in the older APIs and support to the older platform. How do you see and explore and evolve over a period of time over these changes? Please let me know your comments in the chat sections. I'll share my ways how do I took these changes and incorporate them in the my code. Like I follow the GitHub's open source projects, which helps me understanding the others code base, which helps me to understand the architecture to follow up in a particular pattern. Also, I follow the Twitter blogs, which are shared by some of the expert in the Android. I'll also recommend you all to follow up all those documents and open source projects to learn more about Android, new features in Android as well. Coming on to our first slide, what's new in Android? The new is Android 11 version. How many of you know the name of the Android 10, Android Q? What is the name of the Android Q? Does anyone know? Because every version of the Android has desert name associated with it. Please let me know your answer in the chat box. What is the name of the desert name? If it has, please let me know. Also, I'll cover what's new in the UI. There is two important section under this. Next, I'll cover the privacy changes in Android 11. And last, we'll cover the scope storage, which comes up with the new functionality of limiting the broad access of storage. This one is the most interesting area because it was the user see in its first visual effect. When any user open the app, this is what he is gonna see first on the screens. The first one under this UI section is window insets. If anyone don't know what is window insets, system windows are the part of the screens where the system is drawing either interactive or non-interactive content. The interactive content could be your keyboard, your state navigation bar, or non-interactive content could be your such as status bar on top of the toolbar. So most of the time your app won't need to draw under this status bar or the navigation bar. But if any condition, if you do, please make sure that interactive elements like button, text field, edit text are not hidden underneath them. So window insets API provide you more information about the multiple types of content being displayed on the screen, and your content may need to locate it in order to live in the same space. And how does your content respond if the screen is smaller as well? It should be reactive, I think. And to integrate in the code, what you need to do is you can implement a listener, and within that listener you get an insert information. Here you can see you are getting an insert information, and with that you can query, is that keyboard here in this example we are getting the information about whether the keyboard is visible or not. There are multiple types of information you can get with this insert information, and you can manage your content according to those informations. You might be thinking why this feature is being enabled. Well, one of the reason I would like to state here is the keyboard animation. This could be one of the favorite feature in Android 11 as well. Ability to synchronize the content in your application with the animation of the keyboard is what the window insert API can help you here. So as the keyboard changes, it would be nice to know where keyboard is coming, how fast is it coming, or your application can smoothly transition with it. There are a couple of ways to do to animate your keyboard. One is to listen for the changes, and other is to drive the keyboard animation directly. Before going to the implementation part, I'd like to show you a screenshot. If you look at the following example, on the left hand side, you can see we are clicking in the field there, and that makes the keyboard animate smoothly because you are getting those events along the way. And on the right hand side, we are actually physically scrolling the content in the application, and you can see the keyboard swipes up because we are driving the animation directly in the application code. Here is the way to do that. If you want to listen for the animation changes and react to automatic animation in the keyboard, you can set a callback listener where you get that information at each of these steps and do the appropriate thing with your content as shown in this screenshot. Other is, if you want to drive the animation directly, then you can call this control window insets animation function and passing the few parameter into that. The first one is the type that you want to animate. It could, here in this case, we are using keyboard. You can take other couple of types as well, like status bar or navigation bar. Second parameter is the duration, which we have defined -1 due to infinite duration. Third one is the linear interpolator. You can provide other interpolator as well, such as accelerate, deaccelerate interpolator, slow in, fast out interpolator. Third one is the cancellation callback. If you need to cancel the animation, you can do as well. And the last one is the life cycle event for the animation. So I think this gives you a complete control over the animations and seamless transition experience for the user. I think this is much better as compared to previous. Moving on to the next topic, here are some resources you can check how to implement. This is the sample app for window insert animation. Also check out the Google Docs on to know more about this. Next is conversation. Android 11 makes a number of improvements to the way conversations are handled. And conversations are communications that are in real time, that are bi-directional or multi-directional. It's not the one way. The conversation is never gonna be one way. And it is possible to have a conversation between two or more people. So these conversations are presented in their own area now in Android 11. And notification for these conversations are highlighted and given extra functionality. The extra functionality includes here is if you presses a long press on the conversation notification, the systems offer these several choices like promote this conversation to show as bubbles. I'll cover this bubble in this after few slides. And the bubble is supported from Android 10, but now in Android 11 it's a full support, because in Android 10 it was under the developer preview feature. And you can create a shortcut for this conversation as well and add it to the home screen. uh, and couple of more options like silence or snooze notification for this conversation. This was also the you were getting this option previously as well, to silence the notification and snooze the notification. And one more is the you can mark this conversation as very important by prioritizing these conversations. You'll get these options to prioritize these and conversations. The notification designs uses a new version of messaging style that emphasize an avatar representing people, combined with the icon for the app carrying on the conversations. Under the conversations, we have bubbles. And you should remember bubbles from Android 10, where we showed it off as the developer preview features. Now in Android 11, bubbles have graduated from developer preview feature to a full user features. With bubble, user can actively get engaged in the conversations by using bubble. You can see here on the top left of the screenshot, you got that bubble where the user can tab on that bubble. A mini activity pops up as you directly get into the conversations that were happening earlier in the application. And I think this is the really easy way for users to access the information rather than going to the app, clicking and going to the conversations through app. This makes more easy for the users to access or to get involved in this in these conversations, active conversations. This I have discussed, like this was the Android 10 developer options, and in Android 11 we have this as a full features. These bubbles earlier before Android 10 before Android 10 and in Android 10 as well, this was implemented through system alert window, but now Google recommend using bubbles rather than system alert window. And how to do that? There you need to take care of following things when implementing a bubbles. First, to make it resizable, just put an attribute called resizable activity to true within the activity tag in manifest file. When you need this, because this feature is a part of multi-window feature, and that window is going to be of different size as compared to the display. First, create an intent, passing it the activity, and this activity should be a resizable activity. Otherwise, you won't be getting a bubble as a notifications. Next, create a pending intent, passing the intent to it, and the putting the flag as well as in the context. Next is you need to create a metadata regarding the bubble. Here we are passing the shortcut ID to put in together with the conversation space. And you can set the bubble as usual. You can create a notification object, builder object, and pass that as a set bubble metadata. And you'll also set the shortcut ID, and you'll get this bubble as a notifications on your screen. Some of the best practices I would like to talk on this here. Bubbles take up screen real estate and cover the other app content. You should send a notification as a bubble if it is important enough, such as ongoing communication, or if the user has explicitly requested a bubble for some content. Bubbles can be displayed by the user. In that case, a bubble notification is shown as a normal notification. You should always make sure your bubble notification works as a normal notification as well. Also, the process that are launched from a bubble, such as activity or dialog, appear within the bubble container. This means a bubble can have a task stack. Things get complicated if there is a lot of functionality or navigation within your bubbles. We recommend keeping the functionality as specific and lightweight as possible. Here is the sample you can check out in the GitHub user interface sample slash bubble Kotlin to know more about how to implement bubbles. Next is we have privacy. Why is privacy so important? Well, all the people around the world rely on their smartphone to do a lot of things, and these smartphones has become an integral part of everyone's life. There are a lot of ways where sensitive information can be exported from the device. Therefore, it's important for user to trust on their devices. And privacy, an area where Android is keep evolving over the last several releases of Android, and we are continuing to do so on Android 11 as well. Changes in Android 10 paved the path for us to evolve our platform to bring even greater protection of users' data. Today, we'll talk about new enhancement in Android 11. The aim to provide our users more control over how their data is used and how to make users of data by the platform and app developers more transparent to them. The first thing to start with is the permission changes. And this changes applies to all runtime permissions. When given a choice, users are choosing to share less private data with their apps. We also saw that there are many apps which request background locations with no need for it. So there was an review and feedbacks by the users about what other types of data are important to them. Based on the feedback in Android 11, we have more granular control over users' private data, such as locations, camera, mic, and significantly limiting the access of background location. Earlier, back in Android 10, when given an option to select location only while app is in use, users selected this option half the times. So in Android 11, we are evolving the Android permission systems to give user even more control. Giving user an option to temporarily grant permission valid for only single use by an app. The grant is expired after a certain period of time when apps move to the background. This permission applies to microphone access as well and camera access as well. Think of an app, suppose Zoom app only, if you are requesting a video call, but you don't use this app many times. So you can give this permission as a one time only, and after a certain period of time, this grant permission will be revoked from that app. I think this brings more privacy and access to the user's data. Next, you must be thinking how much you need to make changes in your app when targeting Android 11. And believe me, it's nothing if you are following the best practices so far. I would like to quickly show some best practices regarding the permissions, runtime permissions. Here is the pseudocode, and this pseudocode applies to the all runtime permissions. The app should always check whether the permission is granted or not before taking any action which requires it. Also, do not try to cache and persist it to the storage, as this could lead to out of sync with system states. And next, let the system decide if a rationally or show an in-context UI explanation. Normally, not always we show. The first time the system will consider that it's not needed at all. And in the else section, you can request the permission if not granted successfully. You get a callback in on request permission result either when the permission is granted or permission is denied, and you can show an explanation to the user in case of denied permission denied, that this particular functionality will not work because of permission. When users were reminded that apps were accessing their location in the background, more than 2/3 of them decided to restrict access to the background location. So to give users more fine-grained control in Android 10, the permission has been splitted between foreground and the background location access. Apps are encouraged to incrementally request this permission to give users better control. First foreground permission, then all the time location access. You can request a background access after that, after successfully granting the foreground access. Also, there is no change to the foreground access request. But when you request a background access, this screenshot shows when you request a background access after successfully granting the foreground access for the permission, you will be redirected to the settings screen where user can grant or deny the permission background access of location. In Android 10, we show an extended dialog box instead of showing this. Also, it's a good practice to educate the user before requesting the extra permission with some sort of explanation UI as shown in the screenshot here. This is the extended dialog which will be shown when you opt out for the particular when targeting an SDK for 28. This is the extended dialog you'll see, and when you target the SDK to Android R, you'll see that's you'll get a one dialog for foreground service, and then in the next dialog you will be redirected to the settings screen for accessing the background location, where user can accept or deny the permissions as well. Now it's time for the next useful statistics data, and this is for the app uses. Average smartphone users has about 75 apps in their device, but regularly interact with only about 3 of these apps. Rest all apps remain unused, and those apps may not be providing much value to the users. But these other apps has access to users' data from previously granted permissions. And we believe that the system can do more smart decisions rather than putting everything on the user side. By default, for apps targeting Android 11, Android 11 will automatically revoke all runtime permissions if the app is not used for certain period of time. Moving on to the next topic, we have data access auditing. To help developers understand their patterns of data access, Use of this is better scoping and restricting access to sensitive data. By understanding how their apps uses sensitive data, developers can be more transparent to users about their data access. Data access could be done or unintendedly done, but you should give the more transparent to the users that you are not accessing their data unknowingly. You should get the user consent at every access of the private data. A best practice for building mobile app is to ensure transparency for accessing private data. For example, it should be clear and obvious to the user why a voice over internet protocol apps need to access their contact information, or why any camera app want to access the camera. This should be obvious and should be known to the users for the particular request. So what are the challenges faced by the developer in identifying data access in their code? Actually, there are large apps and so many people can contribute to the same app if they have a large team. So it's obvious that accidentally data access can happen. Also, you might be using a third-party SDK, and these libraries might access private data without knowledge of the developers because of the previously granted private data access permissions. In the above cases, this access pattern may or may not be intended, and it is not always easy to identify which app access this private data. So therefore, in Android 11, we have two new APIs for the developers to bring back in control over their app's data uses. The basic feature is a callback when data is accessed, and on top of that, we allow developers to access a logical features within the app that is called as feature tagging. In this picture, each blue line represents a piece of code in the app, and the gray lines symbolize that the code is accessing certain private data. Whenever an app calls an API that returns private data, the system calls into a collection handler immediately before returning to the calling code. Hence, at this time, the collection handler can collect a stack trace to record which code performed the access. Let's have a look on the API. This shows how to set up a callback for data access through the App Ops Manager class. If you want to consistently track it for the entire app, you can set it up with application on create method, or if you want to localize it to a particular part of your app, you could do it within your activity on create method. Within the on-off noted callback class, your app will be notified of data access in synchronous call as well as in asynchronous access as well. For an asynchronous, your app register a callback listener, and for synchronous, when this happens, you may log the stack trace to help you identify the source of this access. For more complex apps containing multiple distinct features, example, mapping app might have a navigation, explore nearby shopping, find friend features. So in Android 11, you have an option to attribute or to access a feature which is the subset of the app by attribute context. And each of this subset uses the private data. Example, find friend features might not need to use the microphone. So by this way, you can track what kind of private data this find friend is trying to access. It should be obvious that the find friend is going to look for your location so that it can inform that nearby person to you. So data auditing APIs allow you to attribute data access to features, and this is how you can do it in your code. The attribute feature in your code, create an attribution context, giving it a meaningful name, like here we are providing the find friends. Then you can pass this to the content API, context to the API, as we are following this. And within the data auditing callback, you can recover the attribute tag through the variable called attribution tag. Then you can, for example, track the attribute with your analytics solution and associate a particular feature with private data access. To provide better accountability for apps to access private data in the foreground service, we have added a couple of new foreground service types values such as microphone, camera. We'll see in the next slide. Introducing the concept of foreground service types in Android 10, app can declare their intention to access this info within its foreground service. There are two types that are being enforced. The first one is the media projection and second one is the location. Under the media projection, such as it includes such as auto, Bluetooth, TV, other devices connections such as monitors and interactions. And in locations, it includes GPS, map, navigation, location update. There are a couple of new additional foreground service types in Android 11, and camera is one of them. Since Android 9, apps can no longer access camera in the background. So for quite some time, this can only be done in the foreground. If your apps target Android 11, it additionally need to declare the new types, else the foreground service can't receive data. Here is the manifest entry for camera. If the foreground service need to access different data, you can declare them as well here together. Like we are providing the foreground service type for microphone and camera together. Please make sure if you want to access any of this camera, microphone or location, make sure to include this foreground service type in the manifest file. Next, we have the package visibility. On Android 10 and earlier, any apps could query a full list of installed apps in the system. But apps targeting Android 11 now have to specify the list of apps that needs this visibility too. Else they will not be able to see the apps outside this specified list. As I said, in Android 10 and older, this provides an app which are installed on the device. It gives you the all the installed app in the device. So to provide better accountability for access to installed app on a device, Android 11 includes some changes to how apps can query and interact with other apps. For several common scenarios where you don't need to make any changes, but there are few changes, we'll have a look in at once. If your app target Android 11, this API will return the package info for your own app as expected. And this will return the calling app and certain system packages such as media provider that implement core Android functionality, but not the other apps in this case. Suppose if you send an implicit intent for another app to take action, here example, use the image capture intent to take a picture with the pre-installed camera app. As expected, if there is more than one eligible app, the system will show a dialog for the user to choose from which app you want to capture an image. This functionality is unaffected by the new package visible by this new package visibility changes. Beside the scenario we just discussed, by default, your app will return name not found exception if you try to access the other apps apart from the system, some systems app which provide the some core functionality. Whether this package app is installed or not, this will throw a name not found exception. So how can you handle this scenario? If you need to explicitly interact with another app, use this new query element in the manifest to explicitly specify the package your app needs to query / interact with. The app can now query, for example, as shown in this slide, the app can query com.example.store and com.example.service. Multiple package entries are permitted. There is other way as well. You can implicitly do this with intent filter signature. This app can now query all apps that can handle action send intent for JPEG image, providing the MIME type. Within this data element of a single intent, you can use each of the following attribute at most once. First one is the MIME type, second one is scheme, and the third one is the host. Each intent tag within that data tag should contain at most one of these MIME type, scheme, and host. Now you might be thinking how to query all the packages. It's a very rare case. Your app might need to query or interact with all installed app on a device, independent of the component they contain. To allow your app to see all other installed apps, Android 11 introduced the new flag that is query all package permission, which you need to define in the manifest file. But this is not possible for every app. There is an upcoming guidelines for this to use in your app. Only on the valid case your apps will be permitted on the Play Store, otherwise it will be rejected. I'll list down the few scenarios where we can use this query all packages, such as launcher apps, such as browsers, security apps. I'll explain you what security apps can use. You might have noticed that you may get a notification sometime on your device that particular app is draining your battery, or particular app is using so much of resources, and it asks you to clean that app as well. So security apps needs to know what all are the apps installed on your device so that it can easily manage your resources in your OS. There are a couple of new flags as well. Have you seen these dialogues when you try to run this code? You'll see this dialog and it asks user to which one to open. So with regarding to this, we have couple of new flags which can handle a more in a more easy way. On Android 11, we have new flag, that is flag activity required non-browser, and it ensures that the intent is only handled by a default native apps. If one is not available, if default native app is not ever available which can handle this URL, then this will result in an activity not found exception. And in the exceptional handler, you can choose to take over handling the intent manually. Either you can open a Chrome tab or you can open it in a new web view. There is another similar intent flag called flag activity required default. And it ensures that there must be one default app that can handle the view intent. Else it can also result in same exception and you can override the experience for your users. And now it's time to talk about the scope storage. Before diving into the scope storage, first understand what is shared storage is. And I'll give you a current scenario what it happens. All apps have their own private directory in the internal storage, such as Android/data/your package name, and it's not visible to other apps. And most of the current apps require broad storage permission to perform single function. For example, downloading an image, or at the time of uninstalling the app, most of the times files don't get deleted, and this result in insufficient storage. The idea behind the scope storage is to organize data into specific connections and limit access to broad storage. If any apps that targeting Android 10 API level 29 can use request legacy external storage attribute to opt out for an option of scope storage. After updating app to target Android 11, and system will ignore this flag. To use scope storage, you should migrate all your data to a specific app specific directory. So what are the benefits of scope storage? In scope storage, media files can be contributed without permission, as these media files are going to be directly app specific directory. And node media files can be contributed to the download directory without permissions. Also, reading non-media files require the system picker and storage access framework API. Now, if any apps requires to access the location metadata about image locations, it needs to request the permission, that is access media location permission. And with the user consent, you can get the information about the image location. Media player app, and such as media player app or image filter apps, uses the media store API and requests the read external storage permission in order to access the files. The write external storage and write media storage do not grant any additional write access if you are targeting and target SDK for Android 11. You do not get any additional write or read access with this permissions. Some of the do's and don'ts I would like to highlight here. Don't use a static path for accessing a file. This features was locked down in Android 10, but due to some recommendations, it has been re-enabled in Android 11. It is recommended to always use media store because under the hood, this static file path access uses the media store API. Also, put your content to the specific directory. It's always recommend to do not put image file inside the music directory. And non-media files should always be included in the download directory. In this scenario, if you are using a scope storage. With Android 11, we have significantly new features which support batch operations. These features are particularly useful for apps that want a streamlined flow for modifying specific media files, such as editing a photo in place. So these are the following support operations. First one is the write request. Request that the user grant your app to write access for the specific group of media files. The second one is the favorite request. Request that the user mark the specific media files as some of their favorite media on the device, and any app that has read access to these files can see that the user has marked this file as a favorite. The other one is the thrash request. Request that the user place the specific file in the device trash. Items in the trash are permanently deleted after a system defined time period. You can think of a recycle bin in a PC. App can choose to trash a file instead of deleting, and user can recover that file later before it expires. Default period is 30 days. And the last one is the delete request. Request that the user permanently delete the specific media files immediately without placing them in the trash folder. However, the default gallery app does not require user consent for any of these modifications. Here is how to implement with the code. These are the list of URIs to modify, and you are creating a pending intent, passing them the all lists of URIs to modify. And after starting for result, start intent for sender for result, you'll get this result inside your own activity result, and you can edit those media files or delete those media files after successfully grant. There are some file access restrictions. When you use this flag action open document tree, following folders and the files are no longer accessed. Like when you open a file access with this flag, you won't be able to access the root directory, download directory, and the directory inside an Android/data or Android/OBB. Also, all the subdirectories inside this data and OBB folder. Also, when you use action open document flag, user has no longer access to the following directories: Android/data and Android/OBB. Also, all the subfolders and files inside this. As I said, accessing media files is through media store because that lets the system better manage for file access, and it is important to note that it also gives you a more performance when you use this media store API. I talked about this Android 10. In Android 10, direct file path access was locked down, but in Android 11, direct file path access is re-enabled, and under the hood, this direct file path access uses the media store API to access those files. So it is always recommend to use media store instead of file path access. Keep in mind that the API that supports native file access is built on the top of media store. As listed down in the slides, direct path access are fairly expensive when you first opens or read those files. So it includes the cost of performance when using this direct file path access. Now you might be thinking, what about the few apps which need broad access to files and external storage, such as file managers and backup and restore requires broad access of file access. So we have this one flag in Android 11, that is manage external storage flag, which will allow them to request the user to grant them all file access in settings. This manage external storage access provide read and write access to all files within shared storage, such as the folder include SD card slash Android slash media. This flag also access to the content of media store.files tables. It also provide access to all internal storage directories. It also provide access to root directory of both USB and SD card. But write access to all internal storage directory, it it does not provide you the access to the Android slash data directory and SD card slash Android and all its subdirectory, because this file includes file path access. Also, this permission does not include access to the data outside your app specific folder, such as other apps directory. You cannot access those data. There are few other important changes in Android 11. Before Android 11, this read phone state permissions cover a broad set of information, including general states such as phone is ringing or idle, and contain more private information such as phone numbers. But if your app targets Android app R, the permission become more fine-grained. Read phone number permissions cover this API. You can call this method inside the telephony manager and telecom manager. If your apps only need phone number, you may want to declare your permission like this. This request is on pre-Android version of 11, pre-Android 11 version, and this is for the request on Android 11. That's all what I have to share with you for in today's talk. we'll have a quick wrap up what I have talked about in this talk. The first one I talked about was UI. Under that UI, the two new features are Window Insert API, which provide the information about the Windows insert views, and which can provide information regarding keyboard animation as well. Second one I talked about is the bubbles, which is the part of the conversations. And next we moved on the privacy changes. Under that, I talked about the restrictions in background locations. I talked about the data access, private data access. You cannot access now some of the private data without user consent, such as accessing the media location information is not possible without the user consent. Then we moved on to the foreground service type. Some couple of new flags we have introduced, such as camera flag, microphone. Also, we have extended these permissions for foreground and background permissions. First, you need to request for the foreground permission, and then you are gonna request for the background permission. And last, we talked about the scope storage. The purpose of the scope storage is to restrict the broad access of file system and limit down to the specific app directory. That's all what I have, and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you everyone. For any further question, please keep emailing us or put your questions in the chat box. You will be answered soon. Thank you.